All right, we are live from Occupy City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. We will do this introduction the same way we traditionally do our introductions for these lives, for this centric live at least. We are coming live from the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois. We have been outside of the City Hall in Rockford, Illinois for 260 plus days. We came out here as an organization after Tyrus Jones was shot by the Rockford Police Department while he was running away. Tyrus Jones was an unarmed black man. We stayed here throughout the investigation into the shooting of Tyrus Jones. The shooting was ruled to be justified, and the officer returned back to work at the end of November. We continued the occupation through then. On January 5th, 2021, Denzel Duvant was beat by the Rockford Police Department, and one of the officers that was involved in that event in some manner was Officer Dominic McNeese, who was the same officer who shot the unarmed black man, Tyrus Jones. Our occupation stayed through that. On April 10th, 2021, Faustin Guaitigo was murdered inside of his home by Winnebago County Sheriff Deputy Joseph Brulard, and by the Winnebago County Sheriff deputies. They entered into his home like a hit squad and murdered him inside of his home. And less than 24 hours later, Jose Gonzalez Jr. was shot by the Rockford Police Department as he was running away. And we have stayed through those things. We sit here today with the understanding that at some point next week, the findings for the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force investigation into the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr. and into the murder of Faustin Guaitigo will come out. And up to this date, there has never been a Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force investigation that has not ruled the shooting or the murder justified. For sure, bro. Be safe out here. Be safe, be safe. So we sit here on the last week before another investigation comes out with the findings of justified when it comes to police officers murdering and attempting to murder our children in the streets. And our occupation has stayed through the shooting of Jose Gonzalez Jr. and the murder of Faustin Guaitigo, and our occupation will stay through the releasing of the findings. And so I'm here with Kay. We are going to run down the list of a few different topics. If anybody is watching this video, please share this. You can share it with Justice for Tyrus, or Justice for Jose Gonzalez, Justice for Faustin, Justice for Denzel. And then I want to also say Raymond Jackson, a man who died in a car accident because of a police chase that ensued. That led to the man who was being chased crashing into Raymond Jackson's car in which he had his children in. Raymond Jackson died in that car accident, and his children were hurt. So we want to also say justice for Raymond. Again, I would not like to be on the streets while a police chase is happening. I would not like for any of my loved ones to be on the streets while a police chase is happening. Police officers and police departments get millions upon millions of dollars. They can afford to catch the suspect a different day instead of putting at risk everybody that is on the streets. So we want to also say justice for Raymond. And again, so that way people understand why we continuously bring up each one of these events, why we continuously bring up each one of these macro aggressions of police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice. It's because it may be somebody who may not have empathy for Tyrus Jones, but they may have empathy for Denzel Duvant. It may be somebody who may not have empathy for Jose Gonzalez Jr., but they may have empathy for Raymond Jackson. And so our job is to, once that point of empathy has been found, to try to explain how each one of these issues extrapolate to the other and affect us directly and indirectly. And so we start off the lives by speaking about those individuals who have dealt with these issues since we've been here and when we came here. We end the live by remembering the names of people who dealt with these macro aggressions before we got out here, for all those same reasons. So we sit here today, after the 6th city market has taken place. There was an arrest at the area of City Market of Ari. He was arrested on a criminal trespass arrest warrant. This marks the third arrest that has happened on the Friday of a city market. So that means 50% of the city markets that have taken place, somebody has been arrested, somebody who is protesting, somebody who is advocating against police terrorism, mass incarceration, and racial injustice has been arrested. And they have, each one of these arrests have either been at the behest of City Market or at the behest of the City of Rockford government. And again, the City Market and the City of Rockford government are intertwined as entities. When the City Market had its press conference for the upcoming season of City Market, when the board and the executive director Kathy McDermott and Peter Provenzano, the mayor was there. Todd Cagnoni, someone who works inside of City Hall, was there, and so that lets you know overtly that the City of Rockford government and City Market have vested interests. And so that is why they are working in tandem for these things. And that is also a reminder to people who may be wondering, how come you're protesting at City Market, or how come you're outside of City Hall? These entities, these institutions feed off of each other. And the weapon that they use to strong arm their ideology are the police departments and the Metro enforcement agents. And so just as avidly as we have been protesting and demonstrating and standing up against police brutality and against these police departments, we have to also bring awareness and stand up against the institutions that not only protect but also have power over the institution of policing. So those are all of those things tie together to why we are at City Market. And so again, I personally was not at the most recent City Market that took place. At 1 o'clock, I have a no contact order that goes in place with the permit that City Market has. And the permit that City Market currently has takes up everything from the end of the bridge on East State to the corners of First Street and East State. And so I have to be 300 feet away from First Street and East State, which is actually the very edge of City Hall here. So I'm effectively out of the game when it comes to being a part of any type of protest at City Market. I don't have the freedom to walk into there without being arrested or charged with criminal trespass or charged with violation of no contact orders. And so I was not able to participate or be here at 1 o'clock. As it stands, I just leave the area. But I did see from where I was at that Ari was arrested. I seen that it turned out to be that he had an arrest warrant. I seen that even with Ari being arrested and with me essentially being banned from the area of City Market, the May 30th Alliance still went and participated in the protest, still went and participated in the demonstration, still went and forced this issue to be at the forefront of the consciousness of the community and not allowing it to linger in the back or allowing it to become a secondary. And so I think that one of the things that I felt, as much as I felt negatively, or not negatively, but as much as I felt bothered or upset about Ari being arrested and me not being able to be there, to see that the presence was still there, to see that one of the things that was happening is the police department they had cameras and they were filming. And again, I personally believe that's a tactic that's being used to instill some type of intimidation or try some type of intimidation, because last year they had many cameras out. They never needed an officer to hold the camera. Even as it stands now, if they really wanted to have something filmed and they wanted to get video footage, they could get video footage from places. They could have cameras set up in places where people couldn't see, but they had that camera, holding the camera, to try to use an intimidation factor. And so it was good to see people persist through those things and people continue through those things. Ari, I think that one of the other things that I thought is the extent to which these institutions are going to over these issues, to be overtly arresting people on camera, to be overtly trumping up charges, to be overtly giving no contact orders, and to be giving criminal trespass orders in public places. And I think, again, one of the reasons that they feel emboldened to do these things is because of the lack of outcry that is coming from more members of the community. And so that's something that I have to push for people for. We have a graphic that we've been putting out, the city market with it's a different rendition of the usual city market logo. And so I would encourage people to continue to share that and to please share that as often as possible. Some of the videos of people being arrested and the content that has been created around the demonstrations that have taken place so far in this city. I encourage people to share those. I say that to say that you can go to the We Demand Facebook page, and they have content there and videos there of things that have happened in these last couple of city markets. Please share those things. There are video footage on Dinez and on the Great Conversation podcast page on Facebook. Please go and share those things. They are, again, on the May 30th Alliance page. I just stands here. There's plenty of things, so please continue to go and share those things. And I think that what we have to do is we have to push for people who may not know why people are saying that city market is racist to become informed about it. There's been some videos from last year that have resurfaced a little bit more on Facebook timelines. I encourage people to watch those and to share those. And I encourage people to not just have this conversation behind closed doors, but to have these conversations publicly. When you see somebody who says something about city market or shares something about city market, point out some of the actions that city market has engaged in. Point out some of the things that have gone on around city market, and that is, again, that's a level in which you can exist on. That's a plane in which you can play on, and so. We have to get to a place of understanding that we're going to have to be physically present. We have to get past whatever hindrances that we all have, or whatever hurdles that we all have. And this is, again, slow motion is better than no motion. So this is not condemning anybody. This is saying that we have to start getting into the mindset of being physically present, getting into the mindset of getting beyond our comfort zone and making ourselves uncomfortable in our actions. And again, I say these things because we are coming up on what is definitely going to be a week in which the findings of the investigation of the Winnebago Boone Integrity Task Force comes out, and they are going to be justified. And as a community, we have to have legitimately and purposefully taken a step closer to getting away from more of these justified hearings once this set of justified hearings comes down. I say that to say that there must be a stronger reaction from the community than when Tyrus Jones' investigation was found to be justified. There must be a stronger reaction from the community than when Kerry Blake's investigation was found to be justified. And that goes for going forward, for progress. We understand that in this city there has been at least 50 instances since 1990 of police brutality or in-custody deaths, police shootings or in-custody deaths, and they have all been justified. And so statistically and historically, a precedent is set going forward in which we will deal with these things again. And the only way we will be able to get to a place where we can be like Minneapolis and feel as if some type of strong step forward has been made in the form of dealing with these type of actions happening to members of our community in the sentencing of officers, or in the trial of officers, or in the as much as the firing of officers. The only way we will be able to get to that place is if these institutions see that the communities are willing and organized and mobilized enough to combat the actions that and the ideology that is coming out of it. And we have seen before that we don't need 500,000 people or 50,000 people or even 5,000 people. We've seen what happened when we had 200 people at die-ins. We've seen what has happened when at a point in time in City Market it was 50, 60 people. We've seen what has happened when it was on May 30th when it was close to 1,000 people. And all of these things happen within this community, within this area, and these are not things that are unfeasible or unthinkable to happen again, but we have to build up the political awareness so that way when people are coming out, they aren't coming out for a moment or coming out for a fad. They aren't coming out to put hashtags up or to take social media pictures or to further their political careers or further their business careers. We have to have them coming out with the understanding that we are building towards ending these issues consistently happening to us at this rate in this community. And the only way we will be able to do that is if we understand that for every action, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. And even as a community, if we have no reaction, that is a reaction. That tells these institutions that they are very far away from ever having to genuinely address and deal with these societal root issues. And so we have to be prepared in this week to come out and let the community and let the people and let the city and let the county know that we are a step closer to ending these things. And so 4th of July is coming up on Sunday. I think that anybody that celebrated Juneteenth, I can't imagine how you can be celebrating the 4th of July. So I would encourage anybody that celebrated Juneteenth to come out to City Hall for the 4th of July at 4 o'clock. I can't imagine anybody who participated in these protests and these demonstrations, anybody who has furthered their political awareness, their political understanding, even anybody who is having a desire to figure out where they can exist in this movement that is happening in this city. I can't imagine any of them celebrating the 4th of July. So come out to City Hall. We'll have chalk out here. We'll have water out here. We'll have megaphones here. And again, we will be here for the parade that they're going to march down. We have to understand that America is a land that was created on genocide. The original sin of America, as often as it's talked about as slavery, in truth is genocide, and we do a disservice to understanding just how deeply ingrained the corrupt, inhumane, white nationalist thought is in this country if we don't trace it back to the very original root. And the very original root is the genocide of the indigenous people of this land. And so it is it is beyond contradictory to celebrate Independence Day on the land, on stolen land. It is highly contradictory to celebrate Independence Day as you enslave a race of people. Again, that is because right at the same time as this genocide is going on, it was the enslavement of Africans. And so we have to understand that these are all the things that were going on when these days that are being celebrated were created. And as long as we continuously celebrate these things or are quiet as these things are celebrated, it perpetuates these things happening again. And so we have to not only have dialogues about the truth of what it means to live in a country that will sign Juneteenth as a holiday 10 or so days before celebrating the 4th of July. And then as we have that dialogue, we have to then take actions. And I know for a lot of people that is a step that is very worrisome and is very nervous about taking. And I understand that 100%. I understand it fully. It is part of what this is. If it was not part of the demonstration, and that is what taking an action towards these things are, taking an action towards any of these things are, they're a demonstration in one way or another. Part of the demonstration is the fact that the person who is demonstrating puts themselves in the position of the people that they are advocating for, the community that they are advocating for. It was white people who, because they did demonstrations, because they were doing demonstrations against racism against racial injustice. They were treated the same way as the people that they were advocating for were treated. They were killed the same way that the people that they were advocating for were killed. And so part of us building this political awareness is understanding that there will need to be some type of sacrifice for us to get further. People sacrifice for us to get to where we are at right now, and we do a disservice to the generations that will come after us if we are not willing to make those sacrifices and to take those sacrifices in whichever form in which they present themselves to us. And so again, 4th of July is going to take place here Sunday. If you are unable to make it out to City Market on Friday, I would highly encourage you to come out to City Hall on Sunday. Also come out. We'll post an event up, but also come out City Hall on Saturday. We're going to do some chalking on Saturday as well, just throughout the weekend. And again, we want to make sure that we have to start becoming physically present. We have to figure out how we can become physically present, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes. We have to start bringing these thoughts and creating actions from them. And so those are some of my initial thoughts right now in the moment. I'll turn it over to Kay, let Kay do a little bit of speaking. I got to grab something that's plugged into an outlet. I actually, here, you can just take this mic right here.
There's a couple points that you made that I wanted to speak in regards to. If the mayor and his administration felt adversely to anything that had gone on in regards to the police and how they police this city, and I want every black politician, every minority politician to understand this. I want everybody that's sitting at home feeling like there was some big win in Rockford. There wasn't. Not for the black constituency or the Latino constituency. If the mayor and his administration felt any adverseness to how the police are policing Rockford, he would be publicly denouncing them. That's make no mistake about it. He would be publicly denouncing them and talking about reform, talking about changing how they do what they do. That's not a conversation. It's one thing to observe. I know they have the Citizens Review Board that they're putting together. It's one thing to observe a police's action after he's committed an action. But there is no public conversation about changing the legalities of what he's able to do in his position before he does something. That's not the conversation. That needs to be the conversation in Rockford from the public. When people are saying, what can I do? Come down to City Hall on Monday nights at 5 o'clock to the council meetings. What can I do? You can call your legislators. You can call the mayor's office. You can hold your alderman responsible. Find out who your alderman is for the district that you're in. See, we as a people have been conditioned to vote for a president. And once they get in the office, we go, my job is done. No, not at all. In your local communities, to see real change, you go to the council meetings. You hold your governors responsible, your congressmen responsible, your mayors responsible. Your local politicians, you hold them accountable and responsible. Voting for the presidency is only one aspect, but we as a people gain more traction by going to our local politics, getting involved with our local politics as far as holding them accountable, going to the meetings. It doesn't matter that you don't have aspirations to be a politician. Hold them accountable. If you want to know where the money's being spent in the city, go to the council meeting, because that's where you're going to hear it. That's where you're going to see the documentation. They print out the minutes because it's by law they have to be transparent with what's being discussed in the meeting. So even if you can only come in for 5 minutes and take the documentation and leave, if they start talking about budgets and numbers, the numbers are in the paperwork in black and white. Now, I just wanted to go back to the first point that I made. If there was any aversion from the mayor's office in regards to how the police, the RPD, the Parks Department, or the Sheriff's Department, how they conduct what they do in Rockford, if there was any major disagreement or disapproval, there would be some type of dialogue in the community about reforming the police handbook, discussing how they do their job with the police union, and changing the handbook. Period. That's literally period. This is not about personal feeling. I have zero personal feelings about the mayor. He's the mayor. I personally, every day of my life that I interact with him, I focus on him being accountable to the city. That's my only focus. I have no personal vendetta against the man. It's not even whether I like him, don't like him. All of that is irrelevant. He has a job to do. They all have a job to do. So I hold them accountable. As a citizen of Rockford, I hold them accountable to do their job. But as the mayor and other politicians, I also hold them accountable to speak on behalf of the community, not a portion of the community, not constituents, not specific people or businesses, for them to have a dialogue about the entire city. That's not something we're getting in Rockford. We didn't get that last year. We're not getting that this year. The Justice Center received even more money this year. So what that's telling me is what was not an agenda in Rockford, but there was no black agenda after George Floyd in Rockford. So anyone that thinks that it's time to celebrate or shake hands and kiss babies and take photos with politicians, don't do it. Because your community has received $0. So I don't understand why the black community is really walking around saying there's a win for us. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. I'm going to say it one more time. There's nothing there. Nothing has been done significantly for the black community in Rockford after George Floyd. Nothing significant. Everything that went through the pipeline, a lot of this was already set up in motion before COVID. Some of it took longer than COVID, and it was coming to fruition during this season. So it's not like it was a win or a change now. The few things that did happen, are they important? Yes. Is it enough? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not nearly enough.
Bluetooth disconnected. Bluetooth.
Yes, they have the stipends, the college stipends for the students, if they keep it to 3.0 average. And a percentage of African American students have the opportunity to take advantage of those. But my mind instantly goes to, on a larger scope, that's just a handful. Is that enough? No. Do I feel like Rockford as a city, if they want to cry broke, they can cry broke. That's why you take it on a federal level. I'm not concerned with what Illinois has to spend or what Rockford has to spend currently. I know that this city can lobby on a federal level for additional dollars to go directly to the black community. The city is not doing that. That's why people that feel like there's some kind of win for the minority population here, there is no win. Please understand what I'm saying. There is no win because no one's holding the black politicians in Rockford are not holding the mayor accountable for gaining extra funds for the black community. I'm not focused on the pie that Rockford has. I'm not focused on the pie that's in front of Rockford and divvying up the pieces or hoping that we get crumbs. Stop looking at it that way. Whatever's on the table now is irrelevant because wealth is created. Rockford's black community can literally lobby for a specific amount of funds on a federal level and have the mayor and the governors lobby for that funding and say, listen, over the bridge, the other side of this bridge where the Justice Center sits, where District 1 and the other stations sit, no man's land, the stagnant area of Rockford, the place that has no financial injection of capital coming at all. Because everybody gets focused on the pie and saying, I hope he gets some crumbs out of this. I hope we get something out of this. Stop looking at the crumbs. What we need is to lobby on a federal level and say, listen, we need $10 million ASAP for the black community. If Rockford's crime broke, that's not our concern. We know that the federal government can invest in Rockford, and we just show a track record what the money's being spent on, where it's specifically going to go, and how it's going to benefit the infrastructure of the black community. Now, I'm going to tell you point blank, as a business consultant, why it's not being done. The moment you inject capital into any black community in anywhere USA, the crime rate drops. So I'm not shocked that they're not injecting any capital into the black community, because the moment you do that, you're going to see the seesaw tip. You see more economics. You have a more affluent environment. More affluent environment. You have more college-bound people. You have more taxpayers. You have more people focused on buying houses instead of renting. You change the dynamic of a community by injecting more capital directly into the education, directly into the quality of life in the community. People will have less time, young men in particular, young black men would have less time to focus on how just to make it day by day, and they would focus more on, okay, how many houses do I want to own by the time I'm 25? How many businesses do I want to open up to cater to my community? Because everyone's talking about Black Wall Street. Understand how it came about. Black Wall Street developed after slavery because it was black people saying, listen, we're not trying to integrate into America and force them to accept us. We are ousted and ostracized. They don't want us. But we have dollars that we can invest into each other. And the money stayed in the community. Sounds familiar, right? The finances stayed in the community, and it circulated within the community, and it grew, and you had a prosperous city. The Black Wall Street is only one example of many cities after slavery that were predominantly black, based on completely being ostracized by many areas in the U.S., but they pooled their resources to grow an infrastructure in their own communities. We don't have that in Rockford, and I want people to get that. In 2021, Rockford is less well off than Black Wall Street. Let that sink in. Rockford is less prepared, less stable as far as infrastructure in the black community than Black Wall Street was. So for anyone that thinks there's a win for the black politicians here, there is no win. If anyone thinks there's a win for the black clergy, there is no win. There's no win. It's going to take us as a community to open our mouths collectively. We don't have to get focused on a black Moses syndrome. We'll let him do it, because a lot of people are putting that pressure on Leslie. Leslie's just one man. He's one man, part of something bigger than himself. But there are a lot of people making the mistake of saying, okay, he's the poster child. Okay, he's the person that's going to stand for me while I stay home. He's the person that's going to speak for me while I stay silent. That's not how this works, people. We need a collective effort where people will stand up collectively and we will speak with one voice. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. The Jewish community stands up and they have a collective focus and a collective voice. Anything goes wrong in the Jewish community, they talk to the well-respected people in that community, and then they allow someone to speak on behalf of everyone, and then things get changed. The Asian community is the same way. Italian community, same way. Polish community. Black community, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. There's zero reason to reinvent the wheel. Copy what works. That's what works. Collectively, the clergy needs to sit down with the local black politicians in Rockford and really have a voice in this town. Lobby the mayor to draw funds to the city. Instead of everyone discussing what they're trying to do. If anyone understands politics, the phrase "I'm trying" is just a nice way of saying I have nothing. I have no plans laid out to help you. Well, we're trying. There is no trying. Either you do or you don't. Either you're working on something or you're not doing anything at all. To say you're trying and have nothing to show for it during an administration or after an administration, it's pointless. It's meaningless. It means nothing. We don't need our politicians to try to help the black community in Rockford. We don't need them to try. We need to give them a black agenda, a black plan that we have come up with, and place that in front of them and say, we're not asking you to try. This is the framework where we're giving you something to execute and bring something back to our community. I don't care that they don't have something in place because I know why they don't have anything in place. Like I said, you inject capital into the black community, specifically for Rockford. You inject capital into that side of the city where the Justice Center sits, and the crime rate drops. They understand the dynamic. That's why there is no black agenda coming down from City Hall to the black community. And I don't blame them, because that's really not their job. Their job is to respond to a black agenda being brought to them. And right now, the black politicians collectively are not presenting one. Right now, the clergy is not presenting one. They're not presenting one. They're not presenting a package to say, this is the money that we need to acquire as a starting point on a federal level. Has nothing to do with Rockford's budget or what Rockford is vying for. We, on a federal level, this is a state of emergency for our city. This is a state of emergency. The cannabis tax money for the application is soon. They're going to be opening up the application. Do I think it's enough? Not nearly enough. The war on drugs started in the late 60s. So, to me, I only see it in Rockford as a drop in the bucket. This isn't even a start. It's, in my opinion, it's not even a start. Well, you got to start somewhere. The amount doesn't even address the impact of how many people were incarcerated. I'm not talking 1, 2, 3 years. I'm talking about years, 10, 20 years. I'm talking about wrongful convictions, stacking charges on charges on charges. It was a coordinated effort on a national level to destroy the black family unit, to demonize the black man, to demonize the drug user as well as the drug seller. But also during that time period, you have to look at what the coordinated effort on a national level, what was taking place. The vocational schools that existed in many black cities were eliminated. Why? Because if you don't have the funds or the finances to go directly to college and incur a $35,000 debt or more, you could become a journeyman plumber, electrician, carpenter, what have you, and then graduate. And you put that in today's funds. You graduate with no college debt, and your average salary is $16 to $18 an hour starting, if not higher. That's why when you look at what was going on in the black community in the 60s, black men and black families were 70% married. Now it's flipped. We're 30% married. But there are no coincidences. So when people want to talk about black on black crime, save it. There is no black on black crime in the sense that it's any different than anyone else. 90% of all major crime is committed by people of the same ethnicity or race. So for someone to make the argument, what about black on black crime? What about white on white crime? 90% of all crimes committed against white people are other white people. So should we talk about that? White people are literally 50% of the country. So let's not split hairs on jargon. The black community in Rockford desperately needs infrastructure. It desperately needs a collective voice. Again, we don't need a black Moses to stand up. We need a collective political body. We need a collective political body with a unified ministry to speak about what we don't have, address what we don't have, and then have a plan put together on what we do need. There is no infrastructure in the black community in Rockford. So for anyone walking around saying there's a win, there is no win. I mean, truth be told, there aren't even any crumbs going to the black community. Start going to the council meetings. They have an overflow downstairs on Monday nights that can accommodate at least 40 people. Imagine what an additional 40 people actively going to the council meetings could mean. That's 40 more people every week that are on the front lines, listening to the information, proactive, physically there, and saying, with my body, with me standing in this building, I am holding you accountable. Rockford, I go to the council meetings. I go there. I'm very active in them. I go there, I listen, I take the paperwork home. I have it. I take the documentation with me. I want to see where they're spending our tax dollars. And I can tell you, proof positive, there is no black agenda being discussed in the council meeting. Why? Because they haven't been presented with one. So all the millions that they're talking about around the casino, around the property down there, because the property value obviously goes up when you have other attractions and other things going on. So how I'm interpreting it is that the revenue that they're focused on, of course they're focusing on the casino and the future of it, because they haven't even broke ground yet. They have to figure out all the specifics on that. But when you look at, again, anywhere within a 5-mile radius of the Justice Center, there is no major infrastructure being drawn to Rockford. None. Nothing significant that's going to change the dynamic of what is downtown Rockford. I'm not talking about East State. I'm talking about downtown Rockford. Anyone can, let's say, devil's advocate, you want to prove me wrong. Do a Google map of where the Justice Center is and draw a circle on average within 2 miles. And call your Chamber of Commerce and see who's coming to Rockford to build within that radius. Then make your circle 5 miles out. Call the Chamber of Commerce and the SBA and find out who's coming to Rockford. Is anyone vying for any major infrastructure in Rockford, in downtown Rockford? You're going to see nothing major. So how is that relevant to what we're doing, what I'm doing? Because the city has become numb to any major civil growth or social growth. And it has resolved itself to human trafficking on the level of the incarceration. That is the focus. That is the main focus. They're prepared to scrape together the pennies that they're getting from the incarceration instead of really having another university, a major university, drawn to downtown Rockford. Rockford's not vying for businesses. If you understand what just happened, Rockford received $300,000 to advertise to draw more citizens to move here. The $300,000 was not to draw more businesses. I'm going to say that again. Rockford received an advertising and marketing budget to draw more people, to convince them to move to a city that has no infrastructure at its waterfront, has no infrastructure within a 2 to 5 mile radius of the Justice Center, and that is supposed to be our downtown, our beacon, but yet everything is sprawled out down East State. It's all disjointed. None of it makes sense, but they're trying to make do by saying, well, we got to double down on the Justice Center. Who says? The city is not vying on a national level with a marketing plan to draw more businesses. I want you to understand this. The $300,000 is not to draw businesses to Rockford. It's to draw people to live in Rockford. To double down on the Justice Center means you have to focus on arrests. You have to focus on a crime element, which means you don't invest in the schools. You don't invest in higher education. You don't invest in infrastructure in that social environment, because you have to cultivate an environment for incarceration. It's not... An environment for incarceration is not a coincidence. It is cultivated. Rockford has cultivated. No different than a garden. It has cultivated an environment of incarceration. There is no infrastructure in the black community. There's no injection of capital in the black education system. There's no injection of capital on a social level to help infuse that region with something major and significant. I'm not talking about crumbs. Anything, to me, $1 million or less is crumbs. Why? Because there are certain people that work in City Hall that have jobs outside of City Hall. Their firms make $1 million a year. Their companies make $1 million a year. So $1 million for a whole black community that has no infrastructure is nothing. It's like a cup of water being thrown on a building that's on fire. It's almost insignificant. To me, it's almost a slap in the face because, truth be told, the black community in Rockford needs at least $50 million to start. To make any major impact, to make that community more vibrant, more sustainable, to make it flourish, to make it vibrant, to make it a real black community. The starting point economically would be $50 million, not $1 million, not 500,000. 50 million. 50 million is a good start. And I'm trying to paint the picture of the economic stagnation in the black community. So for anyone to look at Illinois or Rockford and say, well, I don't understand the correlation in the protesting. The protesters came out to stand against police brutality, excessive force, and racial profiling. Those three components are why the Justice Center is so profitable to Rockford. Make no mistake about it. Those three are the elements that make sure the Justice Center is lucrative. There's no way in the world you're going to invest that much money in that building and expect it to be empty. It wasn't designed to be empty. It's currently not being empty. It is a business. It's like building a McDonald's and saying, oh, well, you know what? We just might not get any customers. It was built for a reason, and it is fulfilling its reason. We need a black agenda in Rockford. We need to stand unified. There are a lot of people that, from what I saw in the community, that were telling people, don't protest. Don't get involved. Don't speak up. Okay, well, now you're voiceless. For 2021, you are officially voiceless. So where do we go from here? Gain a voice. It's that simple. Say something. Speak up. Start calling each other and saying, listen, we need a black agenda. Protesting draws awareness to social ills. It motivates you to focus on holding your politicians accountable. The RPD handbook, this is where I'm going with this. The RPD handbook needs to be revised, and the police union needs to be addressed, as well as the RPD, because it's up to the police officer's discretion to decide on the level of force, even to the point of deadly force, based on his perception, his or her. So if you're wondering why they keep getting off in Rockford, it's because that is in the RPD handbook. So how do you execute? You make the handbook change. You hold them accountable by changing that specification, because all they do is go to court and say, well, based on this subsection 2, blah, 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 this is where it says, I feared for my life, so based on my perception of the situation, I chose to use deadly force. Their job is not to protect and serve. If anyone tells you that, they don't know what they're talking about. Their job is to uphold the law. So if it's in the handbook, they're going to use it to their benefit because they're upholding the words on that page. So I would hope that with everything I just said, if someone say, I don't know what to do, start going to the council meetings. See where they're spending the money. 2, hold them accountable to acquire money on a federal level for the black community in Rockford, because they're going to cry. They're going to cry broke. Well, based on our budget, we've already decided this, that. You got to wait till next year. No, you don't. No, you don't. You start laying the groundwork this year for the funding that you know you need. Rockford suffers from a lack of an action plan. Rockford, as a city, has no voice, has no action plan. I'm not looking to the mayor to fix my community. I'm really not. I'm just looking for him to take the ball that's handed to him and run with it. That's it. I'm not looking for him to write anything, to lobby for anything specific, and sit at home burning the midnight oil and writing up something for my black community. I don't expect him to do that. I don't expect any white politician to do that. The black community needs its own black agenda. It's time out for being silent. If you want something, you are going to have to craft it to take advantage of the opportunity yourself. Now, if you're happy with crumbs, please get out of the way. And I mean that in all sincerity. I'm not being funny with anyone. If you're happy with crumbs, please get out of the way so that the people that actually want to see some growth or some change in Rockford, let them stand up. That way there's no confusion on who wants crumbs and who wants something actually significant. The protesting continues because it addresses what Rockford does not have. There is definite corruption in the police force here. Definite. It's not a matter of if I think it is. It's not a matter of my opinion. The Justice Center exists to fill it. The police are on a collision course with destiny because that's their job. Their job is quotas. Their job is locking human beings up because it draws a certain revenue for the city. And it doesn't even get spent where the Justice Center is built. The money doesn't get spent there because if it did, they would be cutting their own nose off to spite their face. Because if they put the money back into the education system, there'd be less people in the Justice Center that look like me. Please get what I'm saying. If the city truly cared about the black community, I'll say it that way. If the city truly cared about the black community, the politicians, if they truly cared, there would have been some kind of track record that you can go back on. Even with the black community being as silent as it is, you would see them saying, we're championing a cause to draw $20 million for the black side of black community in Rockford because we understand how blighted your education is, how blighted your community is, how very stagnant the financial atmosphere is in your community, and we want to bring you up economically, socially, so that you are an active participant in the future dollars that are coming to Rockford and you are a viable, strong aspect of the community to where when we sit down at the table, the pie gets evenly distributed and you're not talking about where are my sidewalks. We have no sidewalks in our areas. There's other areas that'll never be a conversation because they've had sidewalks for 20 years, 10 years. But there are areas in the black community, they're still there. They're still asking for sidewalks. They're still asking for small side streets to be repaved because the potholes are 12 inches deep. There's a complete different conversation when you talk about what the black community needs and what the white community wants. What the black community needs and what the white community wants. Because at this point, everything that gets added to that community helps enhance the property value. It helps enhance the value. So it's an investment to grow the value. No different than if more money was injected in the black community. But then you would have a conflict of interest for the Justice Center. It would be a direct conflict of interest. And at this point, I want there to be a direct conflict of interest. I want there to be so much money injected into that side of the community that they, within the next 2 to 5 years, they have to lay off at least 20% of the police force in Rockford, if not more, because they won't be needed. You understand where I'm going with this? Where they won't be needed. I'm not saying that they're needed now, but I'm saying on paper where the budget doesn't keep increasing. We need 3 million more. We need 2 million more. We need more guns, more bullets, bigger SUVs, more body armor, more SWAT team gear. You see where I'm going with this? We don't need more of that. We need more of a community response of we need more money in the education system. We need our roads fixed. There's a lot of other things that the black community needs, and more police stations is not it. More police on the street is not it. So when people want to focus on the crime, okay, let's talk about that. How did it get that way? The lack of emphasis on injecting capital into the community. That's why you see the correlation of crime. The crime is not the cause. It's the effect. It's the effect of a lack of interest and a lack of concern to inject capital into the black community. The effect is the crime, not the cause. That's not the cause. It's the effect. Hold your politicians accountable. I continue to stay focused on what this is all about. The protesters came out from day one to stand against police brutality, excessive force, and racial profiling. The police met them head on like a freight train and said, really, watch what we're going to do. In broad daylight, in front of everybody watching, we're going to come down on you like a sledgehammer. Why? Because we want you voiceless. We want you quiet. We want you to move out of the way and let us continue doing what we know how to do the best way we know how. Come down on your community. Terrorize your community. Police your community.